Picture this. You have saved for 15 years. You finally pull the trigger on your dream home. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a sparkling pool in the backyard, desert mountain views from every window, and a price tag that actually made sense compared to California or New York. You sign the papers, you shake hands with your realtor, you pop the champagne. You move in. 3 months later, your water bill has doubled. 6 months later, your neighbor tells you the city is considering mandatory rationing. 1 year later, you try to sell, and nobody wants to buy. Not because your home is ugly, not because the neighborhood changed, but because the one resource every single human being on Earth cannot live without, water, is quietly, devastatingly, and permanently running out directly beneath your feet. This is not a hypothetical. This is happening to real American families right now across the state of Arizona and the broader Sun Belt. And today, I am going to show you exactly what is going on, where it is happening, which communities are sitting on a financial time bomb, and most importantly, what every single buyer and homeowner absolutely must know before making the biggest financial decision of their life. My name is Business, and if you are serious about real estate, whether you are buying, selling, investing, or just trying to protect the equity you have already built, this video is going to be one of the most important things you watch all year. Hit that subscribe button right now because we do honest, no-nonsense real estate investigations here that your agent simply will not give you. Let us get into it. Let me start by making something crystal clear. Arizona has always been a desert. Everybody knows that. People have known that for 100 years. So why is the water situation suddenly reaching crisis levels that are threatening property values, halting construction, and sending shockwaves through one of the fastest growing real estate markets in the entire country? The answer is not just drought. The answer is a collision of 3 separate catastrophes happening at the exact same time. The first catastrophe is the Colorado River decline. The Colorado River has historically been the lifeblood of the American Southwest, supplying drinking water to roughly 40 million people across 7 states. But here is the brutal reality of 2026. The river is delivering a fraction of the water it once promised. Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the 2 largest reservoirs in the entire country, have been operating at historically low levels for years. The federal government has been forced to issue Tier 2 and Tier 3 shortage declarations, triggering mandatory cuts to Arizona's allocation under the 1922 Colorado River Compact. These are not suggestions. These are hard legal cuts to the water supply that entire cities and subdivisions were built on the assumption of receiving forever. The second catastrophe is the groundwater depletion crisis. For decades, when surface water was not enough, Arizona communities simply drilled deeper, pump it out of the ancient aquifers underground. Problem temporarily solved. But those aquifers do not refill quickly. Some of them took thousands of years to accumulate, and the rate at which modern developments, data centers, agriculture, and growing populations are drawing them down is so aggressive that entire groundwater basins are approaching the point of no return. When the ground runs out of water, it does not just mean your tap runs dry. The land itself begins to sink, a geological phenomenon called subsidence, cracking foundations, buckling roads, and permanently destabilizing the physical structure of neighborhoods. The third catastrophe is the development explosion. Despite every warning sign, despite every environmental report, despite every hydrology study showing alarming trends, developers continued to pour concrete and hammer nails at a breathtaking pace throughout the early 2020s. The population growth demand was real, the profit motive was enormous, and the regulatory framework simply could not keep up. The result is that thousands and thousands of homes were built in areas that never had a legitimate, verified, long-term water supply. Those homeowners are now stuck. When you put all 3 of these catastrophes together, the river drying up, the aquifers draining, and the overdevelopment, you get the perfect storm that is rewriting the real estate rulebook across the entire state of Arizona in real time. Now here's where I want to get into something that most real estate videos completely skip over: the legal framework around water supply, and how it was manipulated in ways that left ordinary homebuyers completely exposed. Arizona has a law called the Assured Water Supply Requirement. In theory, it is a consumer protection law. Before a developer can sell you a home in an active management area, which covers the Phoenix and Tucson metro regions, they are supposed to demonstrate that there is a legally secured, physically available, 100-year water supply for that development. 100 years. Sounds reassuring, right? Here is the problem. The methodology used to calculate and certify those 100-year supplies was built on optimistic projections that are now falling apart in real time. They assumed Colorado River deliveries would remain stable. They assumed groundwater recharge rates would stay consistent. They assumed population growth would not accelerate beyond certain models. Every single one of those assumptions has proven incorrect. So you have entire master-planned communities that were sold to families with the full blessing and certification of the State Water Authority, and those certifications are now under serious scientific scrutiny. The legal guarantee on paper does not change the physical reality that the water may not actually be there. And then there are the truly frightening cases. The areas outside active management zones, the unincorporated communities, the rural subdivisions where the assured water supply requirement simply does not apply. In those places, developers exploited a loophole that allowed them to split land and build homes with nothing more than a note saying a private well exists on the property. No guarantee of long-term yield. No independent verification of aquifer sustainability. Just a hole in the ground and a prayer. The families who bought those homes, many of them paying $700,000, $800,000, even over $1 million for a luxury custom property in the scenic desert foothills, are now hauling water in by truck just to take a shower. That is not a metaphor. That is the daily lived reality of hundreds of American homeowners in 2026. Let me walk you through the specific areas of Arizona where the water crisis is colliding most violently with the real estate market. I want to give you a clear geographic picture so that whether you are a buyer, a current homeowner, or an investor, you understand exactly where the risk is concentrated. Start out west of Phoenix, communities that experience some of the fastest population growth in the entire nation over the past decade. The allure was obvious. You could get square footage here that would be completely unaffordable anywhere in coastal California. Families came from Los Angeles, from San Francisco, from Seattle, chasing affordable space under endless blue skies. But the western corridor sits at the end of a very long water pipe. The Colorado River water that reaches this region has to travel through an elaborate canal infrastructure. And with federal allocation cuts hitting Arizona harder than almost any other state, the deliveries to this part of the valley are becoming increasingly unreliable. The communities out here are also now in direct competition with massive industrial users. Data centers operated by the world's largest technology companies have planted themselves in this corridor, and their water consumption figures are staggering. When industrial demand spikes and surface water delivery falls, residential neighborhoods feel the squeeze immediately. The financial impact is measurable. Real estate professionals tracking this corridor are reporting increased inventory, longer days on market, and a noticeable softening in asking prices, particularly for new construction in the outermost zip codes. Buyers who would have snapped up these homes in 2022 are now asking hard questions about water security before they ever schedule a showing. Move further out from the metro core, into the communities that represent the absolute frontier of Sunbelt expansion, and the situation becomes genuinely alarming. These are the places where the municipal infrastructure simply never caught up with the pace of home sales. Private water utilities stepped in to fill the gap, but private utilities operate for profit, not for the public good. When infrastructure starts aging and emergency repairs are needed, the costs get passed directly to ratepayers through rate hikes that can feel sudden and brutal. What makes this particularly painful is the profile of the families who moved here. Many of them chose these outer communities specifically because they were more affordable. They were first-generation homeowners, young families stretching their budget to get into the market. They did not have the financial cushion to absorb a 25% spike in their monthly water bill on top of already elevated mortgage payments. The financial stress in these communities is real and growing. Real estate disclosures in these areas are starting to reflect the anxiety. Listings that would have previously highlighted proximity to new retail development are now leading with language about water infrastructure upgrades, which is basically a coded way of saying there have been serious problems. Savvy buyers are catching on, and the market is adjusting accordingly. Down in the southern part of the state, the crisis takes on a slightly different character. The communities near Tucson and in the agricultural valleys below were historically connected to a completely different water system, one tied to Central Arizona Project canal deliveries and a legacy of deep farming culture. But federal water cuts do not respect geography or history. The same Colorado River shortage that is strangling the Phoenix metro is hitting southern Arizona communities with equal ferocity. What makes the South particularly vulnerable is a combination of aging infrastructure and limited municipal financial resources. Smaller towns simply do not have the tax base to fund the emergency water augmentation projects that larger cities can mobilize. They are left trying to make up shortfalls through aggressive groundwater pumping, which creates a vicious cycle, depleting the very aquifers they need as a backup when surface water dries up. The property market in several of these communities tells a stark story. Homes that were flying off the market 2 years ago now sit for months. Water disclosure requirements are forcing sellers to reveal uncomfortable truths about well depths, aquifer health, and contamination issues that were previously glossed over. The era of buying a desert property on faith alone is definitively over. Perhaps the most shocking dimension of this entire story, because it challenges the assumption that money insulates you from these problems, is what is happening in the affluent, scenic foothills communities north and east of Phoenix. These are not modest starter homes, these are million-dollar custom builds, architectural masterpieces perched on gorgeous hillsides, designed for buyers who chose Arizona's desert landscape as a premium lifestyle choice. But the geology of the foothills is unforgiving. Fractured rock aquifers in these elevated areas recharge slowly and drain quickly. When population density in the area explodes, the ancient water table drops in ways that no amount of money can immediately reverse. Some of these communities have found themselves in the extraordinary situation of being water independent in the legal sense. They are outside municipal boundaries, but water desperate in the physical sense. The wells are failing. The aquifer cannot keep up. The response has been chaotic. Water hauling services have become a normalized part of daily life in several of these communities. The economics of hauled water are punishing. Families paying hundreds of dollars every single month on top of their mortgage, their HOA fees, their property taxes, just to have water delivered in a truck. The luxury real estate market in the most water-insecure foothill zones has experienced some of the sharpest value corrections in the state. Buyers at this price point do extensive due diligence, and the water insecurity is a deal killer. Let me get specific about what all of this means in dollar terms, because ultimately, for most people, a home is the largest financial investment of their life. Here is what the data shows across water-stressed Arizona communities in 2026. Days on market for homes in water-insecure zip codes have expanded dramatically compared to the broader metro average. While a well-located Phoenix home in a water-secure area might sell in 3 to 4 weeks, properties in the most affected communities are averaging 60, 90, even 120 days before finding a buyer, and many are not finding buyers at all. Contract cancellation rates have spiked significantly in areas where water disclosure documents have become standard. Buyers are signing purchase agreements, ordering inspections, receiving the full water security disclosure package, and then walking away at rates that are shaking local real estate brokerages. The properties look beautiful, the price looks right, but the water story is sending buyers running. Lot values in unincorporated communities that lack verified water access have suffered catastrophic declines in some cases. Vacant land without a guaranteed water source has become nearly impossible to finance through traditional lenders because appraisers cannot support the value and underwriters will not approve the risk. Sellers who paid premium prices for buildable desert lots are discovering their investment may have lost half its value or more. The rental market is absorbing some of the displaced demand. People who want to live in certain communities but are not ready to commit to ownership in an uncertain water environment. But rental property values also correlate with long-term livability, and landlords in the most water-stressed areas are beginning to see vacancy rates tick upward as tenants discover the reality of living with water restrictions and high utility bills. Insurance is quietly becoming another financial pressure point. Property insurers are increasingly incorporating climate and resource risk into their underwriting models. A home in a water-stressed desert community is not just facing higher water bills, it may face higher property insurance costs, or, in extreme cases, insurance non-renewal, compounding the financial pressure on homeowners who are already stretched thin. I promised at the beginning of this video that this would be helpful, not just alarming. So let me give you the real, practical framework that every single person watching this needs to use, whether you are thinking about buying in Arizona, already own a home there, or are investing in the market from out of state. If you are a buyer, the first and most important thing you must do is demand a full water supply disclosure before you commit a single dollar to a contract. In Arizona's active management areas, ask specifically whether the development holds a certificate of assured water supply and request the underlying documentation, not just the conclusion. Ask your agent to connect you directly with the local water provider and find out what percentage of their supply comes from Colorado River allocations versus groundwater versus reclaimed water. The more diversified the supply, the more resilient the community. Second, research the specific water provider. Private water utilities are regulated by the Arizona Corporation Commission, and their complaint records, rate histories, and infrastructure reports are publicly available. A utility with a clean record and recent infrastructure investment is a very different risk profile than one with hundreds of consumer complaints and aging pipes. Do not skip this step. Third, pay close attention to where the home sits relative to municipal boundaries. An incorporated city with a diversified, professionally managed water system is almost always more secure than an unincorporated area relying on a single private well or a small private utility. The address might look similar on a listing, but the water security picture can be radically different based on which side of a municipal boundary you are on. Fourth, factor water costs explicitly into your affordability calculation. Do not just look at the mortgage payment. Research the average monthly water bill for that specific utility district, ask about pending rate increases, and model what your budget looks like if rates rise another 20% over the next 3 years. In some of the communities we discussed today, that is not a worst-case scenario. It is a likely outcome. If you are a current homeowner in a water-stressed community, the most important thing you can do right now is get politically engaged. Attend city council meetings. Join your homeowner association's water committee. Advocate loudly for your local government to pursue water augmentation agreements, imported water contracts, and aggressive investment in reclaimed water infrastructure. The communities that are navigating this crisis most successfully are the ones where residents demanded accountability from their elected officials and got it. Also evaluate whether investing in water-efficient upgrades to your home, great water recycling systems, rainwater harvesting tanks where legal, smart irrigation controllers, can both reduce your bill and improve your home's market position when you eventually sell. In a market where water security is top of mind for buyers, a home that demonstrably uses water efficiently and intelligently has a genuine competitive advantage. Here's the question that I keep coming back to, and I think it is one that every serious real estate observer needs to sit with. The Arizona water crisis is not a freak accident. It is a preview. The Sunbelt growth story. The idea that you can build endless, affordable, spacious communities across the American desert Southwest because land is cheap and sunshine is free has always contained a fundamental flaw. Land and sunshine are indeed abundant. Water is not. And the entire infrastructure of this growth was built on water accounting that was, in hindsight, dangerously optimistic. Nevada faces many of the same pressures. New Mexico is watching its aquifers with growing alarm. Parts of Texas that experienced explosive suburban growth are beginning to grapple with their own groundwater sustainability questions. The Colorado River Basin is a system under stress that has no simple solution. For real estate specifically, this means that the era of buying desert property without deeply investigating the water picture is permanently over. The market is beginning to price water security as a primary value driver. A home with guaranteed, affordable, well-managed water access is not just more livable. It is a fundamentally better asset. And a home without that guarantee, no matter how beautiful the views or how impressive the square footage, carries a financial risk that no buyer or investor can afford to ignore. The communities that recognize this early, invest in water diversification aggressively, and build genuine, long-term supply solutions will recover and thrive. The communities that continue to operate in denial, issuing permits on the hope that the water problem will solve itself, are setting themselves up for a slow, painful, and very expensive reckoning. Look, I know that was a lot of information, and I know some of it was genuinely uncomfortable to hear, especially if you own property in any of the areas we discussed, or if you were seriously considering a purchase in the Arizona market. But here's what I want you to take away. Knowledge is power. The families who are struggling most right now in these water-stressed communities are not struggling because they made foolish decisions. They are struggling because they did not have access to clear, honest, complete information when they needed it most. That is what this channel exists to fix. If you are a buyer, use the checklist I gave you. Ask the hard questions. Push back on any agent who brushes off your water concerns as overblown. They are not overblown. They are the most important questions you can ask. If you are an existing homeowner, do not panic, but do take action. Get informed about your specific water source, your utility's financial health, and your community's long-term water strategy, and make your voice heard to your local elected officials. This is solvable. It requires political will, creative engineering, and serious investment, but it is solvable. And if you are an investor, understand that the market is actively repricing water risk right now. The windows for both opportunity and exposure are wide open. The communities getting water right are going to be enormously attractive assets. The ones that continue to struggle will see continued pressure on values. Know which side of that line your properties sit on. If this investigation gave you something valuable today, please share it with someone you know who is thinking about buying in the Arizona market. Drop a comment below telling me which area you want me to investigate next, whether it is specific communities, the Nevada market, the Texas situation, or the investment strategies that are actually working in a water-constrained environment. I read every comment, and your input shapes what we cover next. Thank you genuinely for being here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next deep dive. Because while today we covered Arizona, the water and real estate story is playing out across the entire American West, and we are just getting started. Stay informed, stay smart, and whatever you do, before you sign any real estate contract in the Desert Sun Belt in 2026, make absolutely sure you know where your water is actually coming from. I will see you in the next one.